entitled The Intersection of LGBTQIA+ Identity and Youth Homelessness. My name's Malachi, and I am going to be kind of moderating the conversation with my board members, with my peers today. And I have worked locally side by side with people experiencing homelessness with the Fort Collins Rescue Mission in Colorado. Um, and I wanted to continue that work that really just is compelled with the National Runaway Safeline. And so today we're gonna allot nearly all of our time to that discussion about the intersection of LGBTQIA identity and youth homelessness. And then at the end, we're gonna leave some time for some questions and some answers as well. And we invite those questions in the chat at the end of the panel conversation. But first, we're going to turn it over to Susan Frankel, the CEO of the National Runaway Safeline, to provide some context for our discussion today and also share some data that the NRS has collected on the intersection of LGBTQ identity and youth homelessness.
Thank you, Malachi. I really appreciate it. And I just want to first start out by thanking all of the members of our panel from our NRS Youth Advisory Board. We are so excited to hear your voices, to hear your perspective and your thoughts and your feedback, ideas, and everything that you have to say. So we're going to spend, as Malachi mentioned, most of our time today hearing those voices and hearing the conversation that this group has worked very hard to plan. So we're very excited to do that. As we kick off, though, I do want to also welcome everybody. We're excited and thrilled to have so many people with us for this conversation today, and a very important conversation. And just want to, for anyone who may not necessarily be as familiar with the National Runaway Safeline, I do want to make sure just to do a really quick introduction of who we are and what we do and some of the services that we provide. The National Runaway Safeline is an organization that has been around for more than 50 years. We are fortunate to be home to the federally supported national communications system for youth experiencing homelessness, youth who have run away, or youth who may be experiencing a very broad range of crises that may lead to runaway episodes or homelessness at any point. Our primary target or age group that we provide services for are young people ages 12 to 21, but certainly we provide support and resources for youth younger than age 12 and some older. We're also a great resource and support system for parents, service providers, community members, anyone and all who are looking to help provide crisis services, support, resources, or prevention tools for young people who may need that support. We do operate a 24/7 crisis services center where we provide access to support services, resources, and crisis intervention via a hotline, our chat system, texting, email, and a youth forum that is an interactive forum and a great resource as well. All of this is accessible on our website, which is 1-800-runaway.org, and really easy to access and find all of the resources and materials. In addition to the crisis services and support that we operate year-round, we also have an entire arm of work that we do around training, education, outreach, and prevention, providing tools, resources, everything from curriculums to tips and training sheets to all kinds of information online and via social media that are easily accessible, all on our website. And again, all of which are free and available to all of you. So please spend some time checking all of those resources out. As we jump into the topic for today, I do want to take also a moment to thank our partners from the Family Youth Services Bureau. I know that we have a number of folks from FISB on the call or on the in the room with us right now as well. We're very fortunate to work together. We have a number of other NRS staff members, and of course, all of you who are critical partners in ensuring that we both exist, but also have the resources and connections and serve as the connector point that's so necessary to provide the support for young people. As Malachi mentioned, I want to just set the stage for just a minute in terms of giving you some data and some information that we've really learned that help to kind of give a little bit of a window or a picture of what some of the experiences may be for youth who identify as LGBTQIA and who may, as through that identity, might also find themselves in various different vulnerable situations and or other circumstances that either lead to the need for a place like the National Runaway Safeline and or many of our other partners that we work with all across the country. So just to give you a general sense, when we look at the overall youth homelessness population or number of young people experiencing homelessness across the US, we know that on average, about 4.2 million young people will at some point throughout a given year experience homelessness. We take sort of a deeper look at that number and break that down a little bit more according to Voices of Youth Count in a study that they shared and data and information that was done and released in 2018. We also know that though disproportionately, the experience and the impact for LGBTQ plus identifying youth can be much different than the broader population. So we know, for example, that LGBTQ plus identifying young adults are more than twice as likely to experience homelessness as their non-LGBTQ plus peers. We also know that this particular group of young people are at a far greater risk of experiencing higher levels of hardship, including higher rates of assault, trauma, exchanging sex for basic needs, and early death. And then finally, from the same report, which I think is really important to note and just to share, is that Black LGBTQ plus youth, particularly young men, have the highest rate of homelessness overall among this population. So that's a little bit of the national scope and the national information, and just again to sort of set this perspective. But when at the National Runaway Safeline, when we took a look at, okay, what are young people telling us when they're reaching out to the Safeline for help? So via our crisis services or our 24/7 crisis services support systems, what does that data show? And does it mirror what we're seeing at the national level? Can it tell us a little bit more? And how do we use this information in order to provide different kinds of support services to maybe influence the direction that we move in as an organization ourselves? But how can we use this information collectively in conversation today, but in many other conversations and circles. So just to give you a little bit of a sense, when we took a look at the data from 2021, so this data is data that we pulled, and it represents young people who have reached out to the Safeline for help. So by virtue of doing that, right, it's just a little bit of a different population. It's a group that's actually come to the Safeline. They may be in some form of crisis that has prompted their reaching out. What we find are a couple of things that really are important to note. Of that group in 2021 who identified as LGBTQIA or LGBTQ plus, for the right terminology that feels right to use, and self-identifying, about 73% of those young people were still at home when they reached out to the team at the Safeline. This in and of itself is really important. This means that they're reaching out most likely a little bit earlier in the stage of whatever crisis they may be facing. It also prevents opportunities for us to provide earlier support and earlier intervention and or prevention that may help preclude that young person or those young people from having to resort to living on the streets or facing really much more difficult and often much more vulnerable situations than they otherwise might be in. So one key point is that many are still at home, offering opportunity for prevention. In addition to that, what we learned is of those youth who reached out, and reached out, whether again via calling us, chat, email, forum, etc. 61% of those young people identified harassment or verbal or physical abuse as one of the reasons that they were reaching out. So some sort type of harm or concern about harm or potential physical or other kind of harm. So we need to, take that into account, which is really one of the precipitating factors for reaching out. And then about 50% or so, a little bit higher, were reaching out as they were addressing or wanting to talk more about coming out conversations, how to come out with family members or friends, overall gender identity and sexual identity conversations that they were looking to have. So that was the additional kind of overall reasons for reaching out. And then what I also just want to share are 3 more pieces of really important data. And then I do want to get on to the heart of this conversation. We wanted to take a look at the demographics, really the age group and the age range of the youth who are reaching out. Again, those who self-identified as LGBTQ+. And when we took a deeper dive and looked at the age range, 43% of the young people reaching out to us were ages 10 to 14. So reaching out to us fairly young, sort of either entering in or somewhere along the spectrum of the middle school kind of age group. And then additional 41% of the youth who identified as LGBTQ+ who reached out were ages 14 to 17. So about 84% of the youth overall were under the age of 18 who were reaching out to us. What that just tells us is young people are reaching out early. They're facing lots of difficult conversations and situations and circumstances at home that are prompting them to reach out for help. So we have to be mindful of this in the kinds of conversations that we're having, the resources that we're thinking about providing, the systems that we're setting up. And things to consider. And then the third and final piece, I mentioned that there would be 3 pieces of data points that I wanted to just leave you with, is that when we asked and young people indicated they had already left home when they reached out, so this is that roughly, right, 25% of the youth who reached out, they had, I say only, but I don't mean that as like, it's only no big deal, but they had only been gone from home for about 1 to 3 days on average when they reached out for help from the Safeline. So again, this is speaking to these early opportunities and early ways that as we work together as a community and work together to look at how do we best address the needs of young people identifying, not only identifying as LGBTQ+ or LGBTQIA, but this really profound intersection between the potential for experiencing homelessness or experiencing homelessness overall, about really recognizing that if we take a look at our systems and we really focus on that prevention and early intervention component, just the profound difference that we have the potential to make. So I think what's really important as I turn this back over to Malachi and to our phenomenal NRS Youth Advisory Board, who, and as we listen to their perspective, their voices, their own lived experiences and their own lived perspectives, is that it's really important that we sort of take all of this information together and make change and sort of drive the direction of what's needed in order to best meet the needs of where young people are today. So I'm going to leave it at that. I thank you again for joining us, and I'm going to turn it back to you, Malachi.
I want to say thank you so much for bringing these data and just like opening the aperture into this conversation that way. And so now I want to our Youth Advisory Board members introduce themselves with name, their pronouns, and a little bit about why they joined the advisory board. Let's start with Amanda. My apologies, EJ.
Hi, my name is EJ. My pronouns are he, him. You said name, pronouns, and why you joined the board, correct?
Yeah.
I joined the board because it's important to have youth representation who have lived experience in the matters. Not having lived experience when you're trying to advocate for something or fight for something leaves a lot of empty spaces when it comes to certain matters that you wouldn't assume could happen. Whether that's a trans individual not receiving the same services as somebody who would identify as bisexual or lesbian, as well as a trans individual not being able to access housing or healthcare coverage simply because we see what new laws are presented, and not understanding that lived experience as a trans person, you cannot advocate for them, especially when facing homelessness when you're trans. I am a trans individual, but yep.
Awesome. Rachel?
Hi, my name is Rachel. My pronouns are she, her, and I joined the Youth Advisory Board because advocacy for me is really important, just as both like a wellness practice is something that I do to like improve my own well-being, and then also to improve other young people's well-being, because if systems aren't created or informed by young people who have lived experience, then they can reproduce harm.
Robert?
Hi, everybody. My name is Robert Speed. I use he, him pronouns. What was the other thing? Why we joined the board, correct? All right. So yeah, I joined the Youth Advisory Board because I am a professional community health worker in my professional career, as well as I have lived experience with being a runaway and even homeless at a point in time. So as a young person, I want to reestablish my connection back with NRS. I used to be a liner on the lines, as well as on the executive board as the youth board member. So I just want to go ahead and decide to give back to my community, young people. Yeah.
And it looks like I can't see everyone on the board right up front, but if there's anyone next, me, okay, Mia. Can you introduce yourself? Tell a little bit about why you joined the board, and as well as your pronouns.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Maya, they, them pronouns. And I joined the board because I also have lived experience of being a runaway and being homeless, and I just want to make a difference and I want to help people, and I felt like being on the board was an opportunity to do that. And I'm glad I got to be here today because I'm also non-binary and part of the community. So yeah.
We're having trouble hearing you. It looks like your mic is out.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Should I just go through it again?
So we heard most of what you said, but yeah, why not?
Okay, so I'm Maya, they, them pronouns, and I'm a non-binary youth who is a runaway and homeless, not currently, but I have lived experience, and I just want to make a difference, and I thought being on the board was a way to do that.
Thanks for sharing. And Tony?
Hello, everybody. My name is Antonio Davis. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I joined the board because I've had experience of being homeless myself for a couple of years, and just also wanted to be able to try to give voice and give the feedback as well, and try to help other youths out as well who are going through a tough struggle and who's also been having a tough time in life.
And Zachary.
Hey everybody, my name is Zachary Mallory. I use they and them pronouns. Why I joined the board. So I am somebody who has lived experience and dealt with discrimination and going into systems, and somebody who wants to enhance those systems and make sure that they're equitable for every single person who benefits from those systems, and make sure that we eradicate the selectiveness whenever it comes to who we're going to serve and how we're going to serve. Make sure everybody gets the exact same equal treatment as everybody else. And you, especially in like vulnerable communities, we have to realize that there are so many different backgrounds and different aspects to each one of us. And each person, as somebody who's on the autism spectrum, it'll be a little bit different than a neurotypical person, if that makes sense. So neurodivergent versus neurotypical, a little bit different. So that's what I'm here to bring awareness to, why I'm here.
And that's kind of a look into our board. And I guess let's kick it off with a question. What does it mean to be part of the LGBTQIA plus identity and community?
So Malachi, I think we're having a little trouble completely hearing through your internet connection. Is there a way? I know Zachary has the questions as well. If we could maybe tag team a little bit, or if we want to try to maybe post the question and we can read it out for you, if that will be helpful.
Yeah, tag teaming sounds great.
Okay, sorry. You're just a little delayed. Zachary, were you able to hear any of the question and you could jump in? Will that be helpful, or do you want Jeff to try to read the questions? We just want to make this easy for everybody.
So it looks like Jeff put the question in the chat. So what does it mean to be a member of the LGBTQIA2S plus community? So we can go to Rachel.
Yeah, I think for me, I identify with the LGBTQ community because I'm not straight. So I think, first of all, that's like just sort of like my sexuality doesn't align with the like normative sexuality. And I also think a lot about like the LGBTQ community for me is a little bit about like non-normality and otherness. And so I also have several disabilities. And so I've kind of come to identify with the LGBTQ community through both my sexuality, but also through my disabilities and through sort of feeling othered or not normal and not entirely accepted by, I guess, like the straight community or communities that are not queer.
Tony, is there anything you want to share?
So for me, for me to be a member is like for my family. Like I know my brother never had the support of when it came to like talking or coming out, and he never really had many people to talk to or really anybody to talk to. So I was always there for him. And then also with my littlest brother, and then my two older sisters who are bisexual as well, and then my brother being gay, like they never really had the chance to actually be who they are. So anytime like it came to a decision of them being like discriminated against, it wasn't fair, it wasn't right. Everybody has a chance to do what they want to. Like everybody should be free to enjoy what they want to do, who they want to be. So they always never had the support, and I was always that main support for them to be able to like be a part of their community and to try to get them out open more so they'd feel like how they want to feel, like not pressuring them or like literally not telling them you guys need to do this, you guys need to just go out there, like be in your own comfort zone. You come out when you want to come out. You literally let them know that this is who you are, this is how you're going to be as a person. So that's me in the community for them and others as well.
I'll go ahead and jump in as well. I'll go ahead and say that to be a member, to identify is not only sexuality, but also identity. So more so, it's not who you're sexually attracted to. It could be also who you identify that you connect with better. So like Rachel has said, identifying as a member of the LGBT plus community, also associated with her disability, it's all about really how you identify yourself, how you want to portray yourself, and who you feel comfortable as you are yourself. So and to add on to that, to be a part of the community, it just goes on to the identifying part. You identify and you feel connected to these group of individuals, and feel connected. So that's what I think that means to be a part of the LGBT plus community. Yes.
Can you speak to the intersectionality of sexual orientation and identity, race, as socioeconomic status? Rachel?
I'm sorry.
I think we need to, Jeff posted the question for you guys in the chat. So, Zachary, can you see it? Do you want me to? Sorry, Malachi. Can you speak to the intersectionality of sexual orientation, gender identity, race, disability, and or socioeconomic status? And feel free, I'll turn it over. Zachary, I'm gonna have you be the backup facilitator here, and we'll see who wants to jump in.
Rachel, do you want to start this one?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to this. So I think for me, I identify with multiple communities, but as I mentioned, I also identify with the disability community. And so I think as someone who is disabled and who has chronic illnesses, I have to interact with the healthcare system a lot. And so I think like a lot of times where I see like my identity is really interacting is in that setting where sometimes I'm not completely understood, or my sexual health isn't completely understood, or there's sometimes just like misunderstandings about my sexuality and the ways I identify in that setting. So I think like through that's sort of one of the ways that like my identities intersect, in that like I have to go to certain settings where I might be more misunderstood more of the time. I also think like because I like don't have family support as a formerly homeless runaway youth, and as someone with a disability, like that also is something that like intersects in healthcare settings, and that like I don't have like there's just sometimes a lot of support needs that I have, but because I don't have that family support, because I'm not supported by my family, like I have to kind of navigate those things on my own. So that's another area where those things kind of intersect.
EJ, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I can relate with Rachel on the side of having a disability as well as being a part of the LGBTQIA+. And then I run into different areas because I am an independent youth with a disability. I work a job, I go to school, I live on my own. One of the biggest things that I seem to run into is when I was living on a college campus, you are not allowed, if you're a trans youth, to live in a certain setting because of your gender identity, but you're also not allowed to work in certain positions because of your gender identity. So the only place that you can live and or work would be in LGBTQ settings, which you cannot access until you're a junior. So that in itself made a bigger mess, on top of me being disabled and identifying as LGBTQ, as well as being trans. And in itself just made college a nightmare. So I only lived on campus for one semester, but then we look at the work aspect. Most employers look at me and see the blindness. I'm like, oh, nope, we don't want you. And then you throw in the fact that you have to respect my pronouns and my chosen name. That adds more into an issue. And like Rachel was saying, and not having that family support when it comes down to medical or just trying to seek insurance like Medicaid, Medicare, or SSI benefits for individuals who can qualify. that becomes a bigger barrier because they no longer see you as a person. You dare bring that disability face front to the office by yourself, or you even show a smidge to the wrong person in that office that you're LGBTQ, and you're most likely to just get laughed at or pushed out if you're not bringing the right documentation that you legally don't need to bring, but they will make it a necessity for you to bring it just so they can prove that you are who you are and you're competent enough, because God forbid you're disabled and gay and everyone seems to go crazy, because that's not how that works. There are some great communities within the LGBTQ community that have set sides for the disability community. That is great, but in itself, it's just a lot of barriers that you consistently run in with people.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, EJ and Rachel, for answering those questions. I am in full agreement with every single aspect of that, and I thank you for your courage and for speaking through the disability aspect to that. So we're going to move on to like the next question. So, as identifying as a member of the LGBTQ community impacted your mental health positive, negatively, or both? I'm going to go ahead and start this one off. So I am a survivor of conversion therapy. I went through it for 2.5 years, and it impacted my mental health because I still deal with the repercussions of being electrocuted because of my attraction to the same sex and being taught different scriptures from the Bible that were entirely completely wrong. And, you know, being diagnosed with cumulative PTSD, like as short as like a couple years ago. I didn't see myself as a survivor. I saw myself as somebody who just experienced like a traumatic event, you know, and I'm also a survivor of domestic gun violence and sexual violence and a number of other things. But it's all shaped like who I am now. Now, you know, I'm on different medications and I'm able to function at least a little bit better than I was. Obviously, medication can't do every single thing that I would like for it to do. And it's actually impacted both negatively and positively because I have to go to different therapists and I have to explain myself every single time. And then I have to think about, you know, since I am on the autism spectrum and I am non-binary, I have to think, is this new therapist really ready to handle with the trauma? Or are they going to get vicarious trauma just by me talking about this? So it's a very real thing, and it's something that you have to differentiate in your mind every single time you enter a new system. I've been in the criminal justice system. I've been in the mental health system. I have experience with living with different things, and it's really impacted me, but it's also shaped who I am today. So let's go to Robert. Do you have anything to add to this?
Definitely, I will add that with the lived experience as being a runaway youth, especially, I'm 23 now. During my high school years, I experienced running away a lot, in addition to experiencing mental health such as PTSD and being diagnosed as a bipolar person. And this made it so much harder just to interact with anybody at all. My peers, my parents, professionals. So even if I wanted to speak out, already having these mental health issues, I just didn't feel comfortable. And then to go a little bit further, as a young person who was a gay male, and then a Black gay male at that, it just made it just a little bit harder to, it could be just a little bit harder to seek out someone to speak to, and feel comfortable with that person, not wanting to judge you or, you know, just put even their own, oftentimes look for someone just to listen. And it's hard enough to find that. And to have someone who would just sit and listen to not only my problems being a young Black gay male, but also my issues with having like mental health issues. Just most simply put, oftentimes youth often are looking for someone to speak to, someone that they can look to for a resource, and it was already hard enough finding that with my mental health. But as a person who identified as a gay male, finding that resource, someone who was actually listen to you was hard, especially living in Chicago. It was extremely hard.
Malachi, do you have anything to add to this?
I was wondering if there was perhaps like a moment that caused some discouragement in day-to-day life, but that also felt like a breakthrough almost, that encouraged you.
Was that a specific question to somebody, or just kind of
like a moment of inspiration or hope, whenever you show up, at the Social Security office, and they're asking you for materials that aren't asked by other people? That's something I've struggled with before, for example, and it's tricky, but if there are moments like of hope in that, and working side by side with someone who does understand those socioeconomic, or all of the things that are tried to be marked against us. Yeah, just asking about moments of hope.
EJ, do you have anything to add?
Yes. And this is truly going to be like the weirdest thing I can say, but the biggest moment of hope was when an organization finally saw me. And this is when I had nothing. I had no family, nowhere to go, no home, no nothing. I didn't even have 2 cents to my name. And I was scared. That's when I was going to the SSI office and trying to get my benefits to be given to me. I was under the age of 18, so it became more of a struggle and fight. I was also struggling with my sexuality, my gender identity, and just everything coming down to collapse because I tried it so hard to be a pretty little princess for my family, and to have everything taken away because I was incompetent for my family to collect off of me anymore. The moment that organization stepped in and offered me that option for help is when I found my voice in fighting for youth who are experiencing homelessness. It was when they saw me and was like, yeah, it kind of makes sense that you're gay. Like, we weren't going to tell you though. So it's like, they saw me, they accepted me, and I finally felt like a connection. And even if they're not by my side at this moment, because we all grow and change, it's the fact that they gave me that option to join an organization, to start speaking up and just using the pain that I've gone through, using your pain when you feel comfortable enough to do so, to speak up and speak out, truly became my enlightenment. It became something that lifted off a burden on top of just embracing who I was as a person. It doesn't get easier, it just gets better to manage.
Absolutely. And Mia, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so it's Maya. And also, I just think anytime people see my pronouns and people like respect them, I just feel heard and I feel seen. And I'm not very outspoken, so like if someone uses she, her pronouns with me, I probably won't correct them unless they're close to me. But just anytime people like use my pronouns and actually like do that, because for me, when I came out as non-binary, it just felt like I was me and I didn't have to hide it anymore. And to a point, I still do hide it because my school doesn't know, but it doesn't really matter because in my personal life, people know, and that's what matters to me. And especially like my mentor, who I spent so much time with, she respected my pronouns from day one. She would talk about any time I would be feeling like off about it or anything, and it just, yeah.
Okay. Then we're going to move into the next aspect. So we're going to discuss about how family dynamics can be improved and strengthened in cases of challenging relationships based on LGBTQIA2S plus identity. Some families struggle to accept LGBTQ youth. Based on your own experiences, what recommendations do you have for youth and or family members when someone is coming out? Any? Tony, are you able to unmute?
Yes. So sorry. So for me, I would say the recommendation is like literally don't be afraid. Like sometimes I know it can be very tough and it can be very hard to really like be open about things, and especially to family, because a lot of times family can be like a little bit judgmental. Um, Always try to confide in like your sister or your brother first, or somebody who you really talk to a lot more, and then at any other point, like try to take it at your own pace, your own time, because literally when you try to do it, it becomes very like it becomes like a much of a struggle, because it's like you're fighting for that chance to like for them to accept you, and it shouldn't be as much as like you having to fight for it. Like they should be comfortable. Like we all come from different backgrounds. Yeah, I know that, I understand that, but at the same time, like have the understanding of like you got to comfort family, you got to show them your support. It becomes hard in the world, so you got to know like whether they come out to you at a different time or they let you know about their sexual orientation or anything like that. You got to be able to be comfortable with it. Like just going ahead and getting all upset or getting mad, it doesn't help the situation, because it makes them feel like, okay, well, it's hard to even trust or tell you or anything, or even be like, well, now what do I do? Like it causes pain, it causes like all the hurt that you try not to have, like the guilt that some people get from it. Like as long as your family can stay strong and respect your choice, and also try to make sure they can just give you the option of like, okay, if there's any other time that you need to talk about it, come and communicate with me. Or if you don't feel like talk to our parents about it, or like siblings, just like I just want you to know that I'm here for you, and then at any time we can discuss it together, and we can literally try to move forward onto it.
Absolutely. Malachi, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would say a little bit of courage goes a long way, because whenever you're hiding yourself, it eats up inside so much. Um, and I remember when I was like a sophomore, for example, I um, came out to one of my like closer friends, and it was just so relieving to have someone like fully know me, because he was my friend, and I also let him know into that side of me, and um, just having someone fully known as freeing, and so being free, is really all you can ask for, and just a little bit of courage with someone um, close to you um, is like it goes miles.
Absolutely. EJ, do you have anything to add?
If somebody is going to open up to you, or you're going to open up to someone, just make sure that you're doing it when you feel safe. If you feel like your family's not going to support you, or you might not support your child, just live together, but don't try to tear them down for being who they are. Just push it off, which can be the worst thing to say to a parent. But if you're not going to be supportive, don't put any energy toward it, because the more negative energy is just going to build more resentment. Allow your child to just do what they need to do. And if you're the child and you have that safe and welcoming household, embrace it, show who you are, speak to them. If you feel scared, or your parents not going to accept it, that's when you talk to a trusted counselor, your friend, somebody that isn't going to tear you down, because sometimes your siblings could be just as worse as your parents are. I grew up in a household with a mother who married a woman and had me with a woman, but she was still very homophobic. And she married a man later on after my mom passed away. And for me to be gay was a sin. It was something that was not allowed. My uncles were perfectly fine so long as it was woman and woman, but God forbid you become trans, and that becomes a different story. So even if you're in a household where it might seem a little bit more welcoming, it can sometimes have the most amount of homophobia or transphobia there is, because not everyone sees the LGBTQ as more than just two women together, which is sad to say, but in my situation, because being trans and because loving whoever I want to love, it wasn't accepted or praised. It was very much, you can like women and men, but that's your only option.
Absolutely, and I want to add on to that. So whenever I was growing up, I was taught that being gay was a mental illness, and you were supposed to steer away from that. And if you identify as this, you are less than, and it took a lot for me to unlearn that. And, my grandfather's sister was a card carrying member of the KKK. So I had to learn a lot of like anti-racism and learn how to overcome a lot of that. I still have like my own internal biases that I'm working on myself. And whenever you grow up around it, it's hard to differentiate what is right and what is wrong. So I've had to unteach myself everything that I learned whenever I was young. And yeah, I mean, coming out in my family, I became the black sheep really quick. I became the person that was, oh, you're just another queer person. You don't deserve to live. You don't deserve this. You don't deserve that. And I immediately became disassociated from everybody. I don't have any of my family on social media. I don't talk to any of them. If I do, it's like a very rare instance. Like somebody's in the hospital and I'm like, oh, hey, how are you doing? Not like they give a damn if I'm alive or if I'm dead, but that's the reality. And I know so many other youth feel that exact same way. And especially in our political climate that we have right now, where we're so divided, it's incredibly difficult to see a positive side. And this leads into like the next question. So based on your own experiences, are there any actions or strategies that have improved family dynamics surrounding your LGBTQ identity, especially from those who have had the most trouble accepting this identity? Let's start with Malachi.
Yeah, and I really want to emphasize this question because struggling, with family dynamics is the most common reason that people reach out to the National Runaway Safeline. And so it's a very important question. And one one step that we can take is to have even smaller conversations about sexuality while growing up. So, for example, like in the 7th grade, I'm taking a health class kind of separate from family life and friend life and a culture is kind of can contribute to that sort of silence around sexuality. And so one person just stepping forward and asking a question like, for example, like, what do you like, as opposed to like, who are you? I think that's one thing that can really kind of improve family dynamics, kind of asking about, what do you like, instead of this big old question of who are you? And so that's one thing that comes to mind, but I'm sure there's much more too. Yeah.
Absolutely. Robert?
Well, I would definitely say just having open communication. As hard as it may have been coming out or working through with my family, just being unapologetically myself, having open communication about who I am, what it means for me to be gay. I mean, it was okay with my mom, but when it came down to my dad, it was a different story. Haven't talked to him since, and that was maybe 10 years ago. So I just feel as if a strategy I would recommend for family dynamics is just having open communication about who you are. What does it mean? Sometimes you have to understand. I feel like I had to understand that everyone's not going to understand who I am. Everyone's not going to understand me and what I want to be, who I am, or things that I like. So just explaining to people like as much as you feel comfortable with. You don't have to always explain yourself, but just to feel comfortable, I always just speak to my family. I'm open with my family. I tell them about the things that I do. I'm being a part of community in Chicago was just like going to balls and experiencing that community, that side of the LGBT community, having that family side. I shared that with my immediate family, with my mom, and that opened her eyes to be more open to the things that I may like, or just who I am more. So that was just something I did, was just always just continue to talk about the things I like, things that I like to do, and who I am and what does it mean.
Absolutely. And you said a key word that I want to point out, unapologetically you. So yes, absolutely 100%. Never apologize for who you are. If somebody does not accept you, that is on them. And I know that it's going to hurt. It's going to take a toll on your mental health. And, you know, there's a lot of people out here that will accept you. You know, everybody that is on this panel right now, we are your family. And just remember that you can always reach out to me anytime any of you need to. I just wanted to throw that out there. And we're going to move into the next to last question. So this one is going to be about RHY providers. So how can RHY providers, including those that provide street outreach services, drop-in centers, shelter, and or transitional housing, meet those needs? Let's start with Rachel.
Yeah, so I think so I serve in Dane County. I serve on the local youth action board here, and we're involved in like the YHDP, which is like a whole program that's sort of like building programs around youth homelessness in Dane County. And I think like a lot of the things that I've been hearing is that a lot of shelters don't accept trans or non-binary individuals, or there's a lot of discrimination. I am a cisgender person, so I never faced that, but I do know when I was trying to access shelter, the shelter that I did access was like, it was marked as like a girls or like a young girls shelter. And so like gender specific shelters can sorry, I'm trying to find a word, can create a lot of barriers for young people trying to access shelter who are non-binary, trans, or gender non-conforming. And so I think like runaway and homeless youth providers need to create a lot of flexibility in those policies and honor self-identification above just like how their programs are saying like this is who we accept. These programs need to honor self-identification, and they also need to be more flexible and also understand that if this is like a girl shelter or a boy shelter, that someone might not identify as either a girl or a boy. And so like creating spaces where non-binary folks and trans folks can access shelter services, even if they don't, you know, strictly identify with who gendered services say they're for.
I would like to jump in there. I'm in my professional career, I'm a community organizer. I have managed programs dealing with youth and homeless youth, and also being an experience in the past. I would say something that organizations could do is just try to implement more of that that framework that Richard was talking about of identity and LGBT plus identity and sexual orientation into the work. So like gender neutral bathrooms and shelters and transitional programs is something that will be beneficial, but it's probably harder because as working in a not-for-profit organization, it's harder already to provide some of the services that you're already trying to provide to an array of people. But just having that additional framework of self-identification, like Richard said, of who you identify as, and things that just basically the things that young people like or feel comfortable with. And that's just the key thing, having an environment where young people feel comfortable to identify and want to come out and ask for additional services other than just saying, I just need somewhere to sleep for tonight.
EJ?
One framework that I'll say is I'll base it off of an organization we have in my county. Safe Berks used to only be for women who experienced domestic abuse, but then they broadened it and then called it Safe Berks after Women in Crisis because they realized individuals who are non-binary or individuals who are trans or men can face domestic abuse. So besides the fact that they broadened who they're serving, as well as implemented those different types of rooms and bathrooms, they also offer different type of contraceptives. If you want to be active, you got to be safe. So offering different types of condoms, or offering the condoms that come with the lube, realizing that you have to provide mental health providers, even if you're just a shelter, having the list of different mental health providers that are safe places for individuals who are LGBTQ plus is very important, as well as just like offering different safe food pantries to access. And it's important to know who's safe and who's not safe. We had a gay crawl 2 weeks ago in the city right next to mine. So the LGBT center went to each restaurant, bar, and place and was like, can you hang this flag to let them know, like, hey, you're a safe space, you give a discount, so on and so forth. And some of the restaurants looked and said, no, we will not, because we are not a safe place. We do not allow those people in here. So now those people who have the flags, we know are still safe. And those who don't, we know they're not. So it's more so just like becoming more aware of like who you're allowing to receive funds from you, that making sure that they are themselves a safe space. And as federal funding works, we all know you can't discriminate, and discrimination can cause you to lose any type of federal funding you're receiving, because you can't discriminate on sex, age, gender identity, disability, so on and so forth. So become open-minded, respectful, and realize we have to acknowledge who is safe and who is not safe.
100%. Maya, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah. So I think just like space and shelters, like definitely food is a key thing, but also something I think people maybe don't always realize it's helpful, just offering support and offering like an ear talk, and like just being like someone who you can go to, because that's how before my mentor left the organization I went to a lot, me and her talked all the time, and we got so close, and she was always the person I would contact if I had something going on in my life, or like I needed help, and it was just so helpful. So just having like someone to talk to and having a support person.
Absolutely. Tony, do you have anything else to add?
I totally agree with the having support and always making sure you have somebody to talk to, as well as when it comes to being like the shelter, like them having the needs of everybody, and especially like how it shouldn't be defined as, well, they should have to be this certain type of gender to be able to either get funding, or like anybody should have to get funding all based off of like not trying to discriminate. Nobody should be discriminated against, first of all, because we are all equal in every way and every way possible. So I think that is the best. So make sure we keep like supporting others, and also make sure we reach out and try to get as much help to everybody, and especially the LGBTQ community as well. So when it comes to sometimes being hard, it becomes difficult to actually try to figure out, well, how are you going to be able to get the support of others? And is this place going to be right for me, especially being like homeless or a runaway? Like, you got to think about exactly where you're going to go. Are they going to be acceptance of you or anything? Like, it becomes very hard to decide on what you want to do when you need help and find resources. So I think that it should be easier when people need help, they can be able to go to somebody that knows, like, okay, we're not discriminating against you. We're going to help you the best that we can, give you all the support that you need, and make sure that you're taken care of. And for others, like, everybody is, like I said, everybody's equal. Nobody's different. Like, everybody should be sticking together. There should be no issue with how people want to describe as their gender. Like, anybody should feel comfortable in their own skin and literally feel comfortable how they express themselves.
100%. All right, so this leads us into the final question. So what do you think is the single most important need to address in order to prevent homelessness amongst LGBTQ plus youth? And we'll just do popcorn style, just go around, and then we can each answer. So starting with Malachi, and then we'll go to Rachel, EJ, and so on and so forth.
I think the single most important need is to allow and that each LGBTQ person has a safe space to express themselves, whether it's like at a youth center or something like that. Really kind of getting right at the start of whenever someone may start to experience homelessness or instability.
Rachel?
I think for me, it really kind of comes down to structural factors and like cultural factors, as we have to address those like discrimination on a structural and cultural level, because those things ultimately impact family systems and how families perceive LGBT youth. And so I think, yeah, I think there just has to be it's kind of a very broad thing, but there has to be policies and like structural things in place that prevent discrimination and protect LGBT young people.
I will jump in and say that for me, I would say stigma. So just stigma around just being identifying as an LGBT plus person. So for families and then just the general public, continue to knock down all that stigma around what it means to identify being part of the community.
Yeah, I'd say the support and also the background of where everybody comes from, because you got to be careful how you address people and how you say it, especially when it comes to their pronouns. You don't want to identify somebody as the wrong person, and also not knowing that they come from a background of not having the support or being identified as the wrong person or anything. So you always want to make sure you show that respect, and also like sometimes mention the pronouns, like ask for your pronouns, or try to get that experience a little bit, ask them about their story as well.
I can jump in. Definitely just like having the support, but also just like something I didn't have is addressing the living situation and trying to make that better so you don't have to run away. I didn't have that and I ended up running away. But I think if I did, it would have been really helpful, and I didn't get that.
Perfect. All right. And then EJ, do you have anything to add to this?
Yep. I think the biggest thing to help with youth experiencing homelessness who are LGBTQIA+, we have to broaden the McKinney-Vento Act to put precautions and procedures into place to protect these youth, as well as have those school social workers and the organizations who work with these school social workers to properly be educated on how to best support and serve these individuals with these identities.
All right, so now we will take one or two questions from the audience, and I actually just saw a really good one. So here's a question. I am a licensed professional counselor and an ally. I often implement gender affirming cognitive behavioral therapy with my LGBTQIA clients, basically reaffirming, enforcing supports. This is helpful. However, when it comes to gender identity, I feel that this is at times is not enough. What kind of interventions have you found to be helpful through counseling? Then we can do popcorn style again, or if we want to start with Malachi and go that way.
Yeah, I think recognizing and understanding that coming out can be a process. And so if we're talking about someone who leaves home because they don't feel, safe when they come out, that in a family system, you have to learn to live together in a supported way. And so trying to make that work is important. So one example that comes to mind is if a local shelter or a mental health service provider could provide 3 sessions of family therapy during that time. I think that would be tremendously helpful. Yeah.
Rachel?
Yeah, I think for me, like I've had a pretty difficult relationship with like therapeutic counseling or just like general mental health care. And I think while I've definitely had like a lot of or some positive experiences, there's definitely been a lot of negative. And I think like for me, sometimes like just like seeking out it, like encouraging a young person to like seek out support in their communities, or being able to provide resources for like LGBT specific communities. Like I know in our communities we have a bunch of different resource centers, and I think those things can also really help improve the mental health of young people who are LGBTQ, because without connecting to other LGBTQ young people, it's really difficult to feel affirmed in your own identity and sexuality. And so yeah, I think looking beyond just like a traditional like mental health setting, and also making sure that young person is connected to people who they can relate to outside of that setting is just really helps with mental health.
Absolutely. And then we will have one last answer. So EJ, do you want to take this one home?
Sure. One thing I'll say for therapeutic services, I went through therapy before I could start HRT. The biggest thing that my therapist could have simply just done was listen to me and not criticize and or judge me, because the biggest thing to understand is gender identity is different than gender expression. I can dress feminine and I can dress masculine. That doesn't change my pronouns being he, him. Somebody else can dress feminine or masculine and they use they, them pronouns, and that's perfectly justifiable. So it's more so allowing them that chance and opportunity to just embrace who they are and experiment and go along with the changes, because at no point in time is their journey going to look like somebody else's.
Absolutely, 100%. Sorry, I'm losing my voice, y'all. So I want to take time to thank every single one of you for participating in today's panel. I would like to thank everyone at FISB, especially Anna Cody, who is the NRS program manager. And thank you to the entire audience for being here and being engaged. These are the conversations that we need to be having. And these are the conversations that is going to create change and steer everything the way that we want to see it. Be the change and let the change overcome the hatred, the bigotry, and every other prejudice. And then I am going to turn it over to Susan from here.
Thank you very much. This was just amazing, and I'm so appreciative of all of you for being here, for all of your words, for your perspective, for your everything that you've shared. I think I've heard a number of times, in order to kind of do your job well, you should surround yourself with people who are smarter than you and who know more than you do. And that certainly is the case. And so I thank you, because you are helping make such a difference. And it's every time we have these kinds of conversations or these panels or these discussions, I walk away with a list of things that we need to think about, that we need to change, that we need to influence, that we need to use to make a difference. So if there are change makers in the room, you are all each incredible change makers. And, you very much are the voices and the people and the perspectives that help, I know for me personally, get back up every day and keep doing the work. So I'm so incredibly grateful for that. So thank you. I know we're just here at 3:15. So just as a reminder, folks, certainly June is a celebration of Pride and Pride Month, which is also why we partly took the opportunity to have this conversation, but really want to emphasize what can't be more important is it is important to mark the celebrations and mark the history and mark the importance of Pride Month, but it's really important to have conversations, to make change, to listen, to learn, and to take all of this information and do what we need to do every day of the year, 365 days a year, not just today or not just as part of June. And that is certainly what we are committed to doing at the National Runaway Safeline. So again, many thanks to the panel. If there is a virtual round of applause or whatever that might look like, you certainly are hearing it, each and every one of you today. Thank you to all of you for spending some of your afternoon here with us. Thank you again to our incredible partners from the Family and Youth Services Bureau. And we will be following up with a short summary from the conversation. And if there's any other information that you need or want from us, please let us know. But thank you again. And that is our panel.
Thank you everybody for joining.